Hi and welcome to The Fun Accountant. My name is Louis, and in this video I'm going to show you how to refresh your ITR12 tax return on the SARS eFiling system, when this is needed, and what the implications are of refreshing an ITR12 income tax return. Normally, individual taxpayers would refresh their tax return on SARS eFiling after there have been changes to their RP5 data, medical data, retirement annuity data, investment income, or tax-free investments. This video integrates with the video of the Fun Accountant about how to submit an annual reconciliation declaration for an employer using SARS easyfile in South Africa. You can find a link to that video somewhere on the screen. When do you need to refresh your ITR12 tax return? Best practice would be to always refresh it before you complete and finalize your tax return submission. Refreshing the return will ensure that any changes are updated, even a change that you might not have been aware of. You as the taxpayer might have discovered an error on any of your certificates and requested your employer or the investment fund or bank to correct it. It is unlikely for banks to make these mistakes, but employers sometimes do. You will later see in the video that this individual taxpayer's return for 2022 was auto-assessed by SARS, and upon reviewing the assessment, the taxpayer discovered that not all the certificates have been included in his tax return. He then requested from his employer an updated RP5. We then submitted the annual declaration, and the new certificate was added and reflected on the taxpayer's tax return. But I'm going to show you exactly how the individual's tax return looked before and after the correction. A word of advice is to always check the auto assessments performed by SARS, or to get a professional tax practitioner to check it for you, because you might be on the bad end of the stick of overpaying tax, which is never a good experience. In another scenario, you could be informed by your employer or investment fund that there have been a change to your RP5 certificates from their end, which will require you to refresh your ITR12 return. And lastly, SARS might inform you of an update of your information. Without delaying it any further, let me show you in this real-life practical example the effects of refreshing an ITR12 individual tax return. Here I am logged in on the SARS eFiling system, and I am on the tax submissions screen where I can access any of the previous or the current year's tax returns. The 2022 current year's tax return status is saved with the date it was last accessed. The 2022 date means the period ending the last day of February 2022, which is the year-end date for individual South African taxpayers. To access the tax return plus other forms like the assessments and communications pertaining to that year, click on a 2022 button. The income tax work page will open. You will be presented on this screen with 100% of the information that most people will need to complete their tax return for a specific tax year. I'm going to focus on the tax returns created, which are highlighted within the green box. The first return was automatically updated and assessed by the tax authority. These auto assessments are a growing trend, and the tax authority is blowing its horn for the growing number in which they are auto-assessing taxpayers. But do not trust and just accept the system, as I'm going to show you now that there was an error with this SARS assessment. When I click on the return to open it, and scrolling down to the area of concern, in this case, the number of certificates issued, as you can see next to the question, how many certificates did you receive? The number is 1, which was not correct, as there is a certificate omitted from this tax return. Click back to go to the income tax work page. On the income tax work page, you can see that there is another saved ITR12 tax return. I have requested a correction of the SARS estimate, and they have issued another return, which is saved as a second return. This request of correction, which I have done, is unfortunately not included with this video, but I think it is clear enough of what I did to get to this point. We have looked at the before slot. Let's refresh the data on this return and see what happens. Below the tax return, you will see the refresh data button next to the query SARS status. You can't miss it. When you hover over it, you will see a clear message explaining what refresh data does. It reads, this will refresh your IRP5, medical, retirement annuity data and address data to the latest data available. If you click the refresh data button, you are presented with a red warning message explaining that the information you have already captured will be overwritten. You are also presented with a checkbox of items that you would like to update. The options are IRP5 data, medical data, retirement annuity data, investment income, tax-free investments. In this example, I'm going to refresh the IRP5 data of the employer, which is what I select and then click on OK. You will get a green notification that the data refreshed successfully right underneath the tax returns. Let's click on the saved tax return to see the effect that the refreshing of the data had on our information and whether the process installed by the tax authority actually works. After the tax return has opened, I scroll to the IRP5 section. I can now see that there are 2 IRP5 certificates. Your employer or investment fund or bank should give you an IRP5 or IT3A certificate in the case where no tax was paid on behalf of the employee. The taxpayer should not add the certificate to their tax return when completing it on eFiling, because the IRP5 or IT3 data are populated and updated to each person's individual tax return via the annual EMP 501 declarations. But the certificate is useful to check that the information given to you agrees with the information that are populated on your tax return. To do this, I'm going to scroll down to the employee tax certificate information in brackets IRP5 IT3A sections of the tax return and click on the drop-down button upon which the first IRP5 opens that I compare with the certificate on hand. The second IRP5 certificate is numbered as a heading and you click on the drop-down button to view the details of the certificate. By comparing this data with the certificate from the employer on hand, I can see that all the information agrees and I'm happy to proceed with checking and completing the tax return. After you have saved the return and gone back to the income tax work page, you can see that the green data refreshed notice has disappeared. We have reached the end of this video, where I essentially wanted to test and show you whether changes made by an employer on an individual's tax certificate after the tax season has opened actually does flow through and update that person's tax return on their end. It was good to see that I was successful with the refreshing data option on the individual's ITR12 income tax work page, and that the system proposed by the tax authority does actually work. I know that not many people have the chance of seeing a real-life example being tested on someone else's tax return, but I believe by seeing it and coming back to this video, it might just help you with your own tax stuff. Thank you for joining me and supporting the Fun Accountants YouTube channel.